All right. Hey, again, thank you everybody for taking the time to register for this Tallahassee residential kind of conversation. This is very informal. We're going to go through a lot of information in about 15 to 20 minutes. But the goal here is to give you a little bit of information to then set up an appointment afterwards. Myself, obviously based here in the Central Florida area. Griffin Broecker, who's based in the Tallahassee market for the Turner Group. And you've got Paul Massey with Samaritan Mortgage. That's also here in Central Florida, but servicing the entire state of Florida, Georgia, North Carolina.
South Carolina, North Carolina, California, and Virginia.
Boom. Let's just keep going. It's like a college football realignment. We're just going to go everywhere these days. So the whole conversation here is to talk about buying a place in your college town. Where are you going? What are you doing instead of having to rent? So about a calendar year or two, a year and a half ago, we started this process, started the investment into Tallahassee because we have a very strong agent in the name of Griffin, who I'm going to introduce you to right now. Griffin has a strong background in property management as well as residential real estate in the Tallahassee area, a Florida State graduate as well. Also a native here of Central Florida, Boone High School. And he has really opened the marketplace to a lot of our investors here in Central Florida, which is also filling a need for a lot of our buyers that are sending kids to college. You can look at a lot of different opportunities. People stay in dorms. You can go and do private dorms in Tallahassee, just like Gainesville. And this conversation does play in other areas. We're just focusing on Tallahassee right now and Gainesville because they are very mirroring in the marketplace. But specifically in Tallahassee, you're looking, when your son or daughter goes to college, you're looking at about $1,500 when you add everything up to have one of these private housing for a 1-bedroom, 1-bath, sometimes shared units, which I'll let Griffin talk a little bit more on. And I think that's absolutely bonkers to me. And it started for me thinking, what am I going to do with my kids? Hopefully, knock on wood, they get into Florida State because it's a better school than Florida, but to ensure that they have a place to go to. And we had the conversation with Griffin, and Griffin has legitimately helped us put 3 or 4 different families in properties up there. He's also opened short-term rentals for people up there and really shown us investment opportunities, which Paul will speak on after Griffin talks a little bit about the Tallahassee market. But in this whole conversation, the best thing for you to know is that from one consultation conversation, we can take you from 0 to 100%, right? From not knowing anything to owning a property in Tallahassee, just based here in Orlando. And yes, you don't have to live in Tallahassee to own a property. You don't have to live in Gainesville to own a property. We have management solutions for you in both markets. We've got people in place that can handle that for you. And again, Paul's team can service the loan from here to get everything going, so we're ready for that. So really, let's go ahead and kick this over to Griffin to have to kind of start a little bit. Griffin, why don't you give us a quick 30-second about your time in Tallahassee, what you're doing, and then kind of get into a few properties.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Colin. As mentioned, my name is Griffin Broecker. I'm our lead buyer seller agent for. Absolutely. Thanks, Colin. As mentioned, my name is Griffin Broecker. I'm our lead buyer seller agent for the Turner Group at Keller Williams up here in Tallahassee. I graduated college and immediately got into commercial property management in the multifamily sector, which is where I was able to get a lot of experience managing similar properties, a little bit different, but did get a good, initial insight into how to efficiently deal with managing students and tenants in a multifamily setting. And, basically just stayed in touch with Colin throughout that period and have just been discussing the astronomically high rents here for student housing and just in the multifamily sector as well. And really started the conversation of, is this a good investment location for purchasing property for people that are sending their kids up here, that are looking for a good investment opportunity that's not going to break the bank. I mean, being born and raised in Central Florida, we all know, you're not getting into anything decent there under 400, 500 grand. That's the, kind of going rate all across Florida. Further south you go, the more basically unaffordable it gets. And in Tallahassee, you can get a really nice property for $250,000, $350,000, and the rent that you're going to be paying for your students to be in these, newer multifamily developments, as Colin touched on, you're going to be paying roughly $1,500 a month. Once you pay for your utilities and your parking and the actual room itself. And you can go that route, or you can buy a property and put your kid in it and put your kid's friends in it and really set yourself up investment wise to be in a really good position down the line, as well as saving money and putting your student or child or your friend's children in still a very nice property that's in a good location. And it just really makes a lot more sense financially, as opposed to spending tens of thousands of dollars per year on rent that you're just never going to see that again. So,
and to that point, right, it's a lot easier for you to understand where you're living right now today. For anyone that's listening to this in your hometown, obviously you never rent. Why? You're living and you're investing into that community. Think the same way when you're thinking college. The goal is for your child to graduate 4 to 5 years, right? If you're like me, you do 4.5, split it right down the middle. And that's really where this whole idea has come from, to invest where your child's going to be. And the number one thing that was important for Griffin and I having this conversation was property management. We all went to college. We all know how we took care of our properties. We have a solution for little Johnny and all of his friends if they're going to be staying in a 3 or 4 bedroom house. There are checkpoints to make sure your property is going to be taken care of. And one of the most important things I'm going to have Paul touch base on after this is getting little Johnny and little Susie involved in the loan if it makes sense for your individual process, giving them the ability at the age of 18 to understand what property management is, to understand what it is to have an investment into a property, and also potentially be put on the loan to start gaining that equity in the home. So when they come out at 21, 22, they're light years ahead of the next people. So yeah, Griffin, why don't you go ahead and talk about, give us kind of the 2 different ends that I know we did a property, you did a property up there around the $500,000 mark. We've also done some properties in the 300 and sub. So why don't you give a little bit of the differences?
Sure. And basically, with these types of investment properties, we're either going one of 2 routes, and that's either going to be, geared more towards the longer term year plus, lease, or what we've had a lot of success with as well is the short term or the kind of hybrid rental structure of those properties. And, so that's really where we would initially start the conversation is, what exactly are you looking to get out of this? Do you want to have a, strictly student rental property that you're going to put your kid in? They're going to be there for 4 years. You're going to rent it to their friends. You're going to rent it to other students. Or do you just like Tallahassee and you're looking for a good investment? You want to come up for the football games. You have, family that lives here, and you want a investment that you can also use as a vacation home, a couple days or a couple weeks out of the year. So that's kind of where we're going to first initially start the conversation. And then kind of go from there as far as identifying price point and, what it is exactly that you're looking for in the property. So once we have that kind of figured out, then we can really start looking into different areas, of Tallahassee. If you're looking for a student rental primarily, then we're going to be looking kind of close to the stadium, closer to campus. If you're looking for a really good Airbnb property, then we're probably going to be looking more in the kind of downtown, more centrally located area of Tallahassee, because it's so much more versatile on that front of pulling in all kinds of different people. There's, people forget this with Tallahassee just because it has that small town, reputation to it. And I always thought the same thing too. Just coming here for school, that, not a lot of other people come here, aside from just actual college students. And that's just simply not the case. There's tons and tons of professionals that come here. We, obviously, with it being the capital, during session, a lot of people are traveling here and needing a place to stay for 2-3 months at a time. Graduations, football games. We have 3 big universities here that their family members are all going to sporadically need housing for that. So that's why the Airbnb is a really successful option, as well as the student housing, because with these rents on these, massive student housing complexes going, higher and higher and higher every single year, it's getting to be really unaffordable. And if you can offer a fair price for a nice, conveniently located house, it's a really attractive option for investors, but for parents that are just looking to save money as a whole. So there's really a lot that we're able to do here with the variety of different properties that are available, as well as, the variety of different locations that are getting more and more popular each year. So.
Yeah, and to Griffin's point, the National Association of Realtors just put out a list of the top 25 towns where younger people are buying in Tallahassee and Gainesville. We're both listed in the top 13. Tallahassee was at 13, Gainesville was at number 5. So the investment is happening around college campuses. And Tallahassee individually, about 3 or 4 huge investment firms have moved into Tallahassee and are buying land that are putting neighborhoods and things like that. So the time to buy obviously is now. We have a lot of our renters and investors and people here in Orlando looking for duplexes, looking for short term, and they absolutely don't exist here. So we've shifted a lot of those up to Griffin and Tallahassee and had some really good success. Most recently, Griffin got a $500,000 property that, remind me, Griffin, what is the rent on that one?
Yeah, so that was off of Bruno Street, which is conveniently located to pretty much everything. It's basically right smack down downtown Tallahassee. We were able to it was listed originally for $550,000. We were able to negotiate the property down to $530,000, and I was actually able to get leases in place prior to closing on the property for $5,000 a month.
Yeah.
With their payment. And as you briefly touched on earlier, what we really like to try and do, if the numbers make sense and we're able to do it, is put the student actually on the loan. And we were actually able to get this done through Paul, and our client was on the loan with his daughter. So what that means from an investment side is you're actually able to get into the property with only putting 5% down because it's owner occupied. So as opposed to having to put the 25% down, you save a lot of money on that front. He's building his daughter credit. He's building his daughter, years and years of positive payment history. And we were able to get this to cash flow, I believe, close to $1,000 per month. Mm-hmm. With 5% down, which is obviously very good. And there's deals like this that are available in Tallahassee. You just have to find them, and they're going to be in a very good spot down the line.
And that's a good point. We can transition to Paul here to talk a little bit on that, because again, it's a home run property, newer construction. So again, for families worried about having to deal with the 1920s, 1940s, things like that, this option worked out very well for them. So deferred maintenance, things like that you don't have to worry about, was great, but not to scare everybody. Not every property in Tallahassee is $500,000. I believe the average last I looked at Tallahassee was closer to $280 on average for purchase price in that area. Just real quick, Griffin, and we'll kick it to Paul here. Talk a little bit about the different properties that do come available around. There are 3 2s near the stadium. There are 2 2s, 3 1s, duplexes even, right?
Sure. So what's really popular for, if you are looking for a strictly student housing rental, single family detached home, the really popular location for those is going to be over near the stadium off of Pensacola Street. And it's just all student houses, it's a kind of traditional looking neighborhood feel to it. But if I had to venture to guess, I'd say that over 90% of the houses in this, kind of densely populated area is going to be, just your traditional off-campus student houses. And the nice thing about these is they're just very, very stable investments, because they are, really just embedded in the Florida State University history. It's funny. I'll, show some of these properties to people's parents that used to go to Florida State, and they know people that used to live in that house. They've been here for a long time. And the nice thing about those is they pretty much just rent themselves. I mean, they're year after year. You don't have to worry about any sort of vacancy on those. They're either just going to keep getting re-signed, or they'll sublease the whole house to someone in their fraternity. That's another, very popular thing in that location, is them being kind of traditional fraternity, how not actual fraternity houses, but a group of fraternity kids will live there, and that rental will just kind of stay in the fraternity. So you just maintain it and get your check, hire a property manager, and then really just forget about it. And that's kind of what I am really happy that I'm able to offer, is really just to make it as easy as possible and as hands off as possible for the investor, from a management side, from finding the tenants, just not having to worry about that. Because with a rental investment property, that is where it can get stressful, is when you're paying all of the mortgage and you're not getting that rent. And that's what we're really able to minimize by just the general expertise of what a property in a certain location is going to be able to do, just to really minimize that risk. So
No, I agree with that as well. And Paul and I do a lot of work over at Full Sail, and we have these same conversations with incoming people that are going to be there for 4 years, things like that, about being able to purchase while their child's at the university. Great conversation about being in Tallahassee. It doesn't have to be a 4-year. It can be a 4-year, but this is also something you can turn into a multi-year investment. I'm a long-term hold investor style. I think Paul is the same way with some of his properties, because your 5, 6, 9, 10, 12-year returns are much greater than your short term. So we'll kick it, Paul. Why don't and again, Paul Massey with Samaritan Mortgage is the Turner Group and many people's preferred lender. Paul's team is one of the best I've worked with. I've used him on every single one of my loan. We refer him out to every one of our clients that we work with, and we refer them out because they're good at what they do. Paul, from the initial consultation, his team, who he has under him, takes care, they give back, and they are truly one of the more, flexible vendors you're ever going to deal with, and lenders that you're going to deal with. And they're going to take care of you. And that's why we use them exclusively here at the Turner Group, and excited to bring Paul on and talk a little bit more about this.
So thanks, guys, for having me. Paul Massey, Samaritan Mortgage Group. I'm the owner, branch manager here in Central Florida. And I will say, I do love the investment side of Tallahassee. I don't necessarily love the team that plays football there. But comparing to what we have here in Orlando, it's one of the last frontiers, I believe, in Florida that's no-brainer rental. So let's talk a little bit about 2 ways to do it. And Griffin really touched on one of the more interesting ways to do it. So your standard investment purchase, right? You can put down a minimum of 15% down. Typically, when you do that, you get hit pretty hard interest rate. Your sweet spot is going to be the 20 to 25% range. 25% is where you're going to see, the most bang for your buck. And what's great about rental properties in Tallahassee is typically at that $300,000 price range on average. It's not as huge of a hit as it is purchasing an investment property in other parts of the state, where you're at, the $450,000 to $500,000 range just to get in, right? So that's kind of a refreshing difference. So that's one way to do it. The other way that's really appealing is building credit for your child at the end of the day, right? And we just closed a transaction that Griffin was talking about, where the client got to have literally the best of all, right? So they got to put their daughter on the loan, which made it where she could utilize 5% down first time buyer down payment, right? She got the interest rate that you would get on a primary residence. So they really got to hit a home run with that. And she got to build credit for herself personally, which was awesome. Not to mention the potential tax benefit. So all that was just a home run in every single direction. And what made it really interesting is, a lot of parents haven't necessarily started building credit for their child yet. So that could present a unique challenge sometimes when going to get financing. But we were able to, in this situation and others, make that happen and get that get the daughter credit, meet within 2.5 weeks by adding her as an authorized user, and then we were able to accomplish all the goals. So fairly quickly. And also, Griff, I think you just said that you got $5,000 in all the leases for these properties, right?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
The leases that you secured for this unit were in upwards of like 5,000 per month. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
So, and the mortgage payment was around 4,000, but that also includes the fact that the daughter is living in the property, right?
Yeah.
So when you
Mhm.
take that into consideration, that's really probably a net of about 2,500 a month because they're not having to pay that extra. So that's kind of the way that I look at it on the number side. So there's one more thing that I wanted to show you guys, and I wanted to do a buy versus rent among a 5-year period. I was on the 5.5 year plan. I think Colin was on the 4.5 year plan, and show you that versus the long term. Okay, so I'm gonna fumble through sharing my screen real quick, and I've gotten pretty good at it from COVID time. So we'll see if we've got it here. Okay, so I hope everybody could see that okay.
Can we take a minute to say, wow, that actually worked? I'm actually shocked that the first try you were able to pull it up.
Yeah, me too. So we'll see if we keep it going here. So this is the shorter period. This is a 5-year buy versus rent. And what we looked at is a $300,000 property, right, in Tallahassee. And we looked at that renting the average room for about $850 a month. Okay. Now, Griffin's educated me on the fact that depending on the location of property, that can be a little bit lower. It could also be a little bit higher, like in the example that he gave. But all of this, I kind of wanted to be somewhere in the middle because we're just speaking in generalization. Once we actually, have a meeting with you guys, we can get specific on everything. But the point of this is, college costs money, right? So if you can walk away with this transaction, walk away from the whole 4 to 5 year period, in this case, 5 years, and be $66,700 ahead of the game, then it just doesn't make sense to not do it any other way. Okay. So to go into some of the details here, this also does not include any tax benefit over renting. So that's more, I specifically left that out. That's more of a conversation you want to have with your CPA, and you'll get involved with depreciation and a lot of other improvements, et cetera, et cetera. So I wanted to not take that into consideration in the net gain of buying a home. So that's just another benefit that you guys can talk to your accountant about. I also took into consideration everything, the cost to sell, right? Just use a standard 6%. I backed out closing costs. I took the amortization gain, which is just from you making your monthly payments every month. And I actually backed down what we think the appreciation will be to 3.54% case. When I talked to Griffin, he was thinking more so 4 to 5%, but we wanted to just be as conservative as possible with this example. So it also shows a cash flow difference. That's just the rental amounts that are coming in versus the mortgage payment that's going out. So really, in every single way over the 5 year period, this makes sense. And I really truly believe in anywhere else in the state that I personally know of, it's just almost impossible to get that kind of return. So I wanted to also compare it to a long-term home. Let's make sure that this shows up for you guys too. Did it flip over to the 9 year, guys?
It did, bud.
Perfect, crushing it. Okay, so this is where it really starts to get wild. So it shows your net gain by buying a home for 9 years is 191,100. Your cash flow difference on that is almost $75,000. And this again, it takes a little bit higher forecasted appreciation because it looks at it just like a 401k would over the long term at 3.71%, but still historically pretty conservative, especially with all of the things that are happening in Tallahassee right now. It again backs out your real estate commission if the property was sold. It backs out the closing costs that you paid to get in. It backs out and to sell, excuse me, and every single other thing you could possibly imagine. And again, we'll custom tailor this to you once we actually have a conversation. But 5 and 9 years, it really makes a huge difference, and it makes a big difference to really hold.
Before you close anything, Paul, can you go back to the 5-year?
Yep.
So again, just to break this down into simple terms, you're using a 3-bed, 2-bath rent coming in, I'm assuming at $850.
Yep.
Right. So if we're using that $850 number, and like I said when we first started this, your one bed, 1 bath in a room that you're going to be sharing at some of these student housing is closer to $1,500. So if you think about over a 5-year period, you're going to do, so every year 850 times 12 is roughly 10,200. You times that by 5, you're talking about $51,000 that you're going to invest in rent in Tallahassee on the very conservative side. I don't think you're finding many places your first year at 850, right? So you're going to have a higher one, a lower one, you're going to go through it. But you're talking about a 5-year rental period of $50,000 on your rental versus a $66,700 net gain on purchasing. Right now, that comes down to us finding you the right property, making sure there's not a lot of your investment that has to go into it, deferred maintenance, things like that. But that's the point that started this whole conversation. 5-year time frame, you can make money. 5-year time frame, you can lose money. So this is an option we want to explore more with you going down that path. And again, this whole 20 to 30 minutes of this Zoom that we have going on here really is to give you enough information to feel a little dangerous, and then to schedule a call with us to really dive in to get specific to what you need. Because Griffin's on a hunt for a property for me. I want to be sub 300. I want it to be a 3-bed, 2-bath in an area that when my kids hopefully get into Florida State and I'm able to come up and stay and kick them out, I can walk to the stadium. So we will do very custom things for you, but please again know that myself, Griffin, and Paul are here for you. We're here to customize this program for you and really work through it. So don't forget, if you at the end of this video, we'll have a link in there. If you'd like to schedule a call with us, we'll have it automatically populated, all that fun stuff that I have no idea how it works, but our team here in Winter Park will get it all done. So again, Paul, Griffin, I appreciate you both, your time. Anything you want to touch on before we hang up?
Think I'm good. You, Paul?
No, I just think it's great because it almost offsets the entire price of education, I believe, too. So you guys know more what that might be, but that's pretty cool to be able to do that for sure.
And the underlying fact here, which is truly one of my favorite things, is that you're setting up your children for success, potentially 4.5 to 5 years later, of having that paid time frame that not many people had coming out of college. I sure as heck didn't have it. I don't think Paul nor Griffin had it. So this is an opportunity, because again, we all play the bank's games. This is all using that advantage to be able to get us ahead further, and that's what we're looking to do. So again, on behalf of Griffin, Paul, and myself, we appreciate your time today, and we look forward to scheduling that next meeting with you.